This is not that lengthy, so what I'm going to do is kind of unusual. I'm going to assign this as your memory verse for next week. This is in Job. He probably wrote this like 4,000 years ago, but God's saying all the time, so it still applies. He says, this is Job chapter 19, verse 25. It says, as for me, I know that my Redeemer lives. Now, can y'all remember that next week? Let's go over it once, and then next week you have it, okay? As for me, I know that my Redeemer lives.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. Let's pray. Father God, we just come for you right now. Just pray you. Father, just pray that you just be with the rest of the service, everything that's said and done. Father, I just pray so far. Just gave you glory and honor. Just that was all. Father, I just pray that you just, because you are worthy of praise. Your word. Father, I pray that you be with Kevin as he speaks. Be with our kids in KFC. And Father, just be with us on Monday and Tuesday of next week and all the way through Saturday of next week. Father, just help us get through the week. Help us. Father, I just pray that we get out of the way and others can see you in us. And that draws them to you. And I just thank you for that. Father, bless this offering in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good morning, everybody. I'm glad you're here, and I know that my name is Kevin Duffy, and I ain't been here in a long time, it seems like. Last week we was at our couples retreat. Week before that, we had Teen Challenge. Week before that, we had another speaker. It's just been a long time, so vacation is over for you. Back to the grind, but that song is kind of important to us because that's the song that we had our couples retreat. It was kind of the theme song for our couples retreat. We're going to play it again as we do our little meet and greet. But before we do that, we're going to bow our heads and we're just going to pray for the rest of the service. Just bow your head. Dear Father, just thanks for today. Had a wonderful couples retreat last weekend. Learned a lot, experienced a lot, blessed by all of those that were there. It was just a tremendous blessing, and we just thank you for that. We just thank you for our couples. We just pray for the service. We pray for the rest of the day today. We've already been blessed. We just pray you'll continue to bless us. We pray your Spirit will be here, that you'll open our eyes, open our hearts, open our minds, that we will be able to receive what it is you have for us. And Lord, we just thank you for your presence. Lord, I just pray your blessings on the rest of the service. And we ask these things in your precious holy name. Amen. All right, I want you to just greet your neighbor, say hello, hug a neck, shake a hand, and we'll get started in just a little bit. All right?
All right.
Good morning, everybody. See you at the bowl is this Wednesday at 7 a.m. It's at the school, so if you want to go and be a part of that, you're more than welcome. The teens gather around the pole there in front of the school and they pray. So that takes place at 7 o'clock in the morning, Wednesday morning, around the pole. I think it's the one right there in front of the high school, the flagpole. So if that's something you want to be a part of, that's when that's taking place. I'm glad to be back. This seems like I've been forever, and I've been here, but this seems like I've been forever since I got up here and spoke. But last week we had our couples retreat, and we had 23 couples go. 23 of us trying, or I guess 46 of us trying to learn and understand how to strengthen our relationships in the context of marriage. You know, that's kind of what we go for. We go to get away. That's probably part of it. It's a time to get away from the kids, and just time to be with your spouse, and you get to, stay in a motel, which was a really cool place. But there is a reason that we go, and that's so that we can kind of understand marriage in a little bit better way. Marriage is hard. It's a tough deal, and it takes work. So that's where we were this past weekend. Some of you, I don't know, maybe many of you have heard of Dr. Smalley. If you ever listen to Christian radio or AFR or any of this kind of Christian radio stations, or Dr. Smalley's kind of a relationship kind of guy. He talks about relationships. So a lot of what we're going to discuss today is something you've heard him speak about. Life is all about relationships. And of course we went on our couples retreat, but life is all about relationships. And that, I guess, should kind of go without saying, unless you live in a cave, which at times I think wouldn't be a bad place to live, I think I could get, I would like it, I think, other than maybe the bugs. Maybe there's bugs in there, I don't know, but bats. One time, it's reminding me of a story. One time we got extra credit, or we thought we'd get extra credit, to taking and we went to a cave here just towards Georgia Street. Went to this cave and just me and a bunch of my buddies, and we crawled in this cave and there was bats in there, so we caught one. We thought we'd take it to Mr. Jones and get extra credit. Well, so we caught it, we took it into Mr. Jones, asked him if we could have extra credit, and anyway, come to find out it was a long-eared bat. It was on the endangered species list, and so now the cave is barred up and you can't even get in there. So we didn't do so good on that deal. But anyway, I think I could live in a cave at times. It's a good place to be, but life is all about relationships. And unless you live in a cave and you completely isolate yourself from people, every facet of your life in some way touches relationships. That's just the way we are. That's the way it is. Everything we do, relationship. Everywhere we go, there's a relationship. We are in relationships with other people, no matter what we do. You have relationships at home with your spouse. It's kind of what we talked about this past weekend. You have relationships at home with your children. You have relationships with your parents. And we talked about those things. Some are good, some are bad, and that's why we go to these things, so we can learn how to have those relationships. Sometimes you have relationships with your siblings. You've got brothers and sisters. You have work relationships with your boss, with your coworkers. That's wherever you're at, you have a relationship. You have a relationship when you go to the grocery store. You have a relationship with the people that are shopping along beside you. Or you have a relationship with the cashier who's checking your stuff out, getting your groceries. You have that relationship. You have a relationship. If you get in your car and you go to Mountain Home or you go to Harrison, you have a relationship with the other people that are on the road with you. Sometimes that is good. Sometimes that is bad. Sometimes it's a friendly relationship that you have with other drivers. Sometimes it's not such a good relationship. You have that road rage, Some of us. You ever wonder why it takes some people so long to turn off? You ever wonder that? Just forever. You're right behind them, and they go to turn off, and it's just slow. You ever wonder? But we have those relationships. No matter what we're doing or where we're going, we have those relationships. The fact is, we are affected by relationships every day, and the people are affected every day, either positively or negatively, by the relationships they have with us. Believe it or not, we are created for relationship. Our DNA, the very building block of who we are, God has placed within us, in each human being, a need to be with other people. A need for relationships. Just like a man has the need to be respected, just like the need that the woman has to be loved, that's just a God thing. You can read it in Ephesians chapter 5. God specifically told, he said, wives, respect your husbands. God has innately put that in each man, is a need to be respected. He also goes on and says, men, I want you to love your wives. Deep inside every woman, there is a need to be loved. God put it there. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told us to do those things, right? But also, not just those things, he has placed deep inside us a need for relationships. After Adam was created, God looked upon the greatness of his creation. After everything was done, and he looked upon the greatness of the creation, and he looked at man, and he said, man, this is not good. He says it's not good for man to be alone. And which we're talking about on Wednesday night, it's the isolation, that kind of stuff. But he says, God, he looked at it, he looked at the greatest creation, he says, okay, it's good. It's not good for man to be alone. So we need relationships. And when those relationships are good, when they're growing, when they're nurturing, when they're positive relationships, life's pretty good, right? Life's pretty enjoyable. Life is pretty fulfilling. When the relationships that you have with each other and the people around you, when all those things are good and nurturing, it's a good day. It's a wonderful day. But when those relationships are sour, anybody experience sour relationships? When those relationships are sour, when they're strained, it affects you and everybody around you in a negative way. When there are problems at home, or when we're having difficulty with one of our co-workers, or we can't get along with our neighbor, and this one we can't get along with our fellow Christians, that's even a struggle sometimes. When those things are not well, then our lives are a struggle. It's difficult, it's hard. It's just the way it is. Rarely do we have a problem in our life that is not connected in some way to a struggling relationship. A lot of times when we go through the things we're going through, things are difficult because we're struggling in relationships somewhere. And since God created us to need relationships, He has also provided us instruction in His Word as to which relationships are the most important. So I want you to turn in your Word to Matthew. I want you to turn to Matthew 22. And we're going to read Matthew 22, 39 through 37. This is the relationship scripture. Okay? Everybody's heard this. Chapter 22 of Matthew, 37 through 39. Jesus replied. Now, this is Jesus speaking. Okay, and you're thinking, well, this has not got nothing to do with relationship. Well, yeah, it's everything to do with relationships. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And then he goes on to say, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. Matthew 22. Relationships. We are hardwired, I think, for 3 relationships. 3 of them. There's a doctor, Dr. Shore of UCLA. He's a neuroscientist and he's a developmental psychologist. And he says all humans are born to form attachments. All people are born to form attachments. Our brains are physically made that way. That's what he says. And I've kind of wondered, well, I wonder who wired us that way. I wonder why somebody would wire us to have relationship issues, to have a desire to have a relationship. I wonder why somebody would wire us that way. Well, it's the same reason He wired us to need love and need respect. Same God. He wired us to need that relationship. So the very first relationship that God says that we need, the very most important relationship that we need, is the one we have with God. Our relationship with God is the most important of all relationships. God is our creator. He has created us to need Him. That's just the way we were created. We were created to need Him. And yet there are people who say, well, God and I, we had a falling out years ago, and I don't have a relationship with Him. Or you might hear someone say, well, I don't believe in God, or I don't need God. Well, the fact is, we all need God, whether you like it or not. We all need Him. In describing God, Paul said this in Acts 17:28. Paul said, in Him, in God, we live, we move, and we have our being. That's what he said about God. In Him, we live, move, and have our being. In Him, everything takes place. Without God, we wouldn't exist. That's what he's saying. So if you want to exist, then you need God. So furthermore, if we all have relationships with God, whether we want one or not, that's part of who we are. We have that relationship. We were created in God's image. We are spiritual beings. If you don't believe that, you can read that in 2 Corinthians 4:16 and 18. But we are spiritual beings. And as spiritual beings, there is a direct connection relationship between us and God. Now, we may not have a personal or an intimate relationship with Him. And granted, our relationships with God may be rather dysfunctional. But all we have we all have a relationship nonetheless. It may not be a great relationship. It may not be a good relationship. It may be a stressful relationship. It may be a dysfunctional relationship, but you have a relationship with God. Whether we realize it or not, our spirit and our soul yearns to be with God, and that's how we're wired. If you was to ask people, what would it take for you to be happy? A lot of times you'll hear people say, well, money would do wonders, or good looks, or popularity, or prestige, all the things that all of us have, right? If that's what's going to take you to be happy, we say that's the things it's going to take you. And yet they still have this void deep down inside, right? They just have this emptiness, this need for something. Something more than just money, prestige, power, and wealth. It's more than that. There's something else missing. And they don't realize that that thing that they're missing is a relationship with God. That void that's deep down inside can't be filled with worldly things. It has to do with the relationship we have with God. When you're feeling empty, it may be because your relationship's not what it should be. It's a spiritual yearning that can only be fulfilled in God. So he's saying the very first thing, the very best relationship, the most important relationship that you can have is the relationship that you have with God. That's what he said first. But then he goes on, he says there's another relationship that's important. God said what he said, but he said there's something else that's important. He said you have to have a relationship with others. Right? God said to Adam, it is God, or of Adam. He said, it's not good for man to be alone. It's not good. In the Garden of Eden, Adam had a special relationship with God. He gave Adam everything he needed. It's a perfect environment. All the food he wanted. Purposeful work. What he was doing was purposeful. It had a purpose. He had dominion over all the animals. Life was good. And he had a tremendous relationship with God. And yet, God looked at Adam and he said, man, this guy, he needs more. There's something more that he needs. And he comes to find out, God says, Adam, you need a companion. You need someone else. Do you ever wonder why? I don't know, it seems like the older you get, the more you want a pet. You ever wonder that? Pets are extremely important. You wonder why that is? Because you have that need for companionship. And plus you can talk to them and they don't even talk back, that kind of thing. But you have that desire and that need for relationships. We need a companion. And this companion may be in the form of a spouse, it may be in the form of a pet, it may be in the form of a friend, whatever it may be. The main thing is God has created within us an innate need for relationships, whether it's family, friends, fellow Christians, co-workers, neighbors, classmates, and so on. Now this doesn't mean that every relationship is healthy. We have some of those unhealthy relationships, right? Everyone in this room has had relationships that's been difficult, whether it's been with your wife or your brothers and sisters or your children. We had those. And you've often heard people say, well, man, I can't live with her, but then again I can't live without her. You've heard those relationships. Sometimes I want to get rid of her, but sometimes I know that I can't because I love her. You ever heard it? I've never said that about Carrie. Ever said that about Carrie. And she probably has said. She probably said, I can't live with him, but I can't shoot him. That's the kind of thing she probably says. Have you ever felt that way? Well, the bottom line is that we are created with a need to have relationships with others. That's just how we are created. God has placed that deep down within us. And without those relationships with others, you can cut them off if you want to. You can go live in a cave if you want to. But God has placed deep inside you a need to have a relationship with other people. And life without that relationship is miserable. It's just miserable. Maybe some of you have heard of Mammy Adams. Maybe some of you haven't. But Mammy Adams, there's a story about her and her post office, and it might kind of help you understand the need for connection and the need for relationship. She always bought her stamps at the same branch. Always went and bought her stamps at the same branch. Well, it was Christmas time, and the line was particularly long. And so someone pointed out, as they were standing in line, that she didn't have to wait in line because there was a stamp machine in the lobby. And she said, I know that, but the machine won't ask me about my arthritis. And that's how we are. You need something beyond just a machine. You need something who cares about who you are. The issue for Mammy Adams wasn't the speed. That didn't have anything to do with her stamp buying. It didn't have anything to do with the efficiency of her standing in line. It didn't have anything to do with it. What Mammy Adams was needing was a relationship with somebody who cared enough to ask her about her arthritis. Deep down in every one of us, we need a relationship with others. This is how we're created. It's a personal contact. So God is the number one relationship. We've talked about, love the Lord your God. You need to have a loving, good relationship with God. You need to have a loving, good relationship with others. That's what it says. And when we're reading Matthew 22, we often see that we are to have a good relationship with God. Okay, that's good. Good, loving relationship with God. We also have a good, loving relationship with others. That's good. And that's where we stop. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And there's, we're done. We got those two things. Love God, love others. Done. 2 relationships. But at the very beginning I said there was 3 relationships that we need to work on. It's not just those 2. What do you think the third one is? You guys want to say? Love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor. And then love yourself. Believe it or not, I need a healthy relationship with who I am. Love your neighbor, and this is what Jesus said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Could that be a reason that we have difficult relationships? Because we don't love ourselves? We don't love ourselves very much? Therefore, we don't love others very much? We didn't talk about that in the couples retreat, but when I don't love myself, it's going to affect my marriage. When you don't love who you are, it's going to affect your relationships with other people. When you don't love who you are, it's going to affect the relationship you have with God. I struggle with that. And I told the people this weekend, when it comes to me personally, I never measure up. I'm never good enough. And most of the time, because I feel that way, nobody else does either. I don't measure up, I'm not good enough, and neither is my wife, neither are my children, neither is my job. Nothing measures up. It affects everything I am. It says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And I want you to understand, we don't need to be self-centered. We don't need to be narcissistic. But in order for our relationship with God and with others to be healthy, guess what? I have to love myself. So if I was to ask you, do you have a healthy, dynamic relationship with yourself? Do you? Are you on good terms with who you are? Are you in good terms with who you are? Do you think yourself important? Here's a good one. Do you like yourself? You ever heard anybody say, well, I don't even like myself? So if I was to ask you that question, do you like who you are? Do you like yourself? Do you accept yourself for who you are? Do you forgive yourself? Some people say, well, I can't forgive myself. Can you forgive yourself? Or are you one of those people who just keep on piling on? I'm sorry. I've done terrible things. I've done loathful things. I'm an awful human being. I will never be worth anything. This is who I am. This is who I'm always going to be. I can't forgive myself. I've done too much stuff, too much bad stuff. Is that who you are? Do you live in a world in which you can't even forgive yourself? Do you live in a world in which you don't even like who you are? Do you think if you live there that you can have a healthy relationship with your spouse? Do you think that's going to be possible? Do you think you have a healthy relationship with with others if you don't even like who you are? Do you think if you live in a place like that, that your relationship with God is what it's supposed to be? I don't even like myself. Do you think it's important if God says, love me, and have a healthy relationship with me? Do you think He would have said, love others, if He didn't care if you loved others or not? Do you think He would have said, love yourself if that didn't matter? Do you think it would matter? Do you think He meant it? Do you think He meant respect your husband, love your wife? Do you think He meant that, just threw that in there because it's just random stuff? I truly believe that God expects us to have a good relationship with Him. And I truly believe He expects us to have a good relationship with others. And I truly believe He wants us to love ourselves. I'll just tell you, I'm not good to myself. Physically, you can tell I'm not good to myself, right? But spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, I struggle at times. And I know that I need to take better care of myself so that I in turn can work at making my relationship with God stronger. And I can build healthier relationships at home and with other people. All three of these relationships are interrelated. When Jesus said that what the first and the second greatest commandments are, He stressed that all the law and the prophet hang on these two commandments. Everything hang on these two commandments. So in other words, all of God's teaching is summed up in that relationship. Everything that He taught about was summed up in these relationships that we have with Him, with ourselves, and with others. Within these three relationships, we will find true happiness. We will find true fulfillment. However, when one of those relationships are suffered, it adversely affects the other relationships. How we feel about ourselves will affect our relationship with others. How we feel about ourselves will affect our relationship with God. Again, if we don't like ourselves very much, we have difficulty believing that other people don't like us. Well, I don't like myself. So, Adam's not going to like me. Why would anybody like me? I don't need to know who He is. I don't need to know anything about Him. Why would He want to get close to me anyway? Look at me. If we have a hard time forgiving ourselves, we may have a hard time accepting God's forgiveness. That relationship there is going to be a struggle. If I can't even forgive myself, I ain't going to be able to let God forgive me for sure. Just look who I am. If our relationship with God's not right, then all of our relationships are a little off kilter. You know, Adam and Eve, as the first man and woman, they learned kind of the hard way how these three relationships are interrelated. Didn't they? They kind of learned. Adam and Eve, they were placed in a perfect environment. I mean, paradise. They were placed right there in paradise. And they had a perfect relationship with God. We walked among them. You know, they used to take strolls in the evening. Perfect relationship. They had a perfect relationship among themselves as husband and wife. I mean, they were become one flesh. Life was good. Great relationship with God. Great relationship with others. They had a perfect relationship among themselves, husband and wife. They had everything at their disposal that they could ever possibly need. Then along comes Satan. Right? In the form of a serpent. And he deceives Eve, telling her that by eating this fruit, she would become like God, knowing all about good and all about evil. So Eve took the fruit, she ate it, she gave a little bite to Adam, and who was right there, and they ate and bit the fruit. You can read about that in Genesis. And this one act of obedience changed the dynamic of these three relationships. This one act changed the relationship, changed the whole dynamic of things. It's crazy. It changed the relationship that Adam and Eve had with God, didn't it? Just think about the story. Instead of a loving, open relationship with God, Adam and Eve had now a fear relationship. They were scared. Their disobedience, their sin had caused a separation between them and God, and they were cast out of the garden. I mean, did that relationship suffer? Well, yeah, absolutely. That relationship suffered. It changed the relationship that Adam and Eve had with each other. Instead of a loving, nurturing relationship of oneness, Adam was blaming his wife. She made me do it. And he was blaming God. Why did you give me her? It was everybody else's fault. So the relationship that they had with God was changed. The relationship, and in that one thing, the relationship they had with each other, that changed. And it changed the relationship that Adam and Eve had with themselves. They couldn't look at themselves as perfect anymore. They were stained. They had sinned. They no longer could walk around with confidence and self-assurance. They are now plagued with fear and hiding. Well, this story is all story. What we discussed this weekend was a part of what we just talked about. Relationships are a big deal. Relationship with God is the ultimate relationship. Number one. But He didn't leave out the relationship that you have to have with others. He didn't leave that one out. And He also didn't leave out the relationship that we're supposed to have with ourselves. 3 important relationships. Once again, we had our wonderful couples retreat this weekend. But for the ones who are here that were there then, that was only one relationship. And if you want to split hairs, maybe 2. The couples retreat focused on the relationship between us and others. Where there are 2 others that we need to make sure that we list as important. The theme this weekend was mind sweeping. That's the name of that song. Dancing in the minefields. And so our goal, or our process this past weekend, was to help strengthen our relationships. Because God calls us to have good relationships. But our goal was to strengthen relationships within the context of marriage. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to look at things that are difficult, hard. It was a military theme type weekend. And so we went mind sweeping. And so mind sweeping is when you go out and you intentionally try to find mines that are planted out there that could potentially blow somebody up. And so that's what we did. We went searching for mines that had maybe left that could potentially cause injury in our marriage. We looked at the family of origin, the weaknesses and flaws of our parents. And nobody wants to, somebody would say, well, my parents didn't have any weaknesses. Well, that's great. You didn't have to do much on that section then, right? We focused on the weaknesses and flaws of our family of origin. We looked for things that were planted in our life that could possibly explode our marriage if not dealt with. Just lying beneath the surface somewhere, waiting for somebody to step on. We looked for those things. We looked also at hurts and experiences in our childhood. Things that we dealt with as a child that will maybe, potentially, be a landmine in our marriage. Hurts and experiences. Loss of a loved one. Maybe your dad left. Maybe your mom left. Maybe they both left. We looked at those things and we thought, well, there are those potential landmines in our marriage. Because we want stronger relationships between each other. We looked at personality traits. Do you know and do you believe that there could possibly be landmines within the personality of the 2 people? Okay? You take a personality test, you find out who you are. Okay? And for example, Carrie is a lion. Okay? I happen to be a golden retriever. Lions eat golden retrievers. Okay? There is potential there if I don't understand who Carrie is and she don't understand who I am. She is very point blank, structured, and golden retriever just really don't care. So we clashed. Is there potential for landmines? Yes. We have to work at that so that our relationship can be the one God wants it to be. And then we looked at simple tendencies and some other things. These things affect our marriage. What we've done over the weekend is we found landmines in our lives that have potential to affect our relationship with our spouse, with others. And so we took these landmines and we wrote on the backs of these landmines things that have potential. Maybe they've never affected us before, but they have potential. Now, there are all kinds of them. I mean, I don't know how many. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play that song. Our goal this weekend, and I told them up front that I don't want you to leave here worse off than when you got here. You know, our goal was to strengthen our relationship with our spouse. And in order to do that, you have to do hard things sometimes. And in order to do hard things sometimes you've got to admit or write down or talk about the things that you struggle with. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pray over these things. Because you have 23 couples who have places in their lives that they struggle with. And so we're going to pray for them. And we're going to pray for relationships. So, what we're going to do is we're going to play this song. I want you to bow your head. If you have an issue with a relationship, I don't care what it is. It may not be your spouse. It may be somebody else or some other thing. If you want us to pray for you, we will. But I want you to specifically pray for those 23 couples. Okay? Pray for all those things that they see that they struggle with. Pray for a stronger relationship between husband and wife. Pray for a stronger relationship between you and God. And you and yourself. If you don't like yourself, be praying and say, Lord, I need to get past who I think I am. I need to understand and know who I am in you. So I want you to take just a minute. I want you to bow your heads. If you need prayer, I want you to come up here and I'll pray for you. Dear Heavenly Father, we just pray for relationships. I pray that our relationship with you strengthens and grows stronger every single day, and that is our desire. And I pray that we'll also understand that the relationship we have with others is important as well. That we need to continually work to have a wonderful relationship with our spouse and our friends and our co-workers. We need to work on that. Because you said it was important. And also the one that we try to forget or don't want to talk about, I pray that we'll learn what it means to have a good relationship with ourselves. I pray that we'll understand that we are somebody special. That we are precious in your sight. And that we as an individual is your absolute masterpiece. I pray we'll work on getting rid of the negative and look at how positive life is when it's in you. I just pray blessings on these people. I pray you'll lift them up. And you'll give them courage to fight for their relationships. We ask these things in the precious, wonderful, holy name. Amen. God bless you. Have a wonderful Sunday afternoon.